Hello, everyone. Welcome into Attacking Third. I'm your host, Lisa Roman, NWSL analyst and broadcaster. My trusty partner, Sandra Herrera, she's on vacation this week, well deserved. So filling in for her, I have with me the lovely Lori Lindsey, former U.S. Women's National Team superstar and analyst. Lori, welcome.
Hi, Lise. Thanks for having me. And hi to Sandra. Hope she's having a great vacation when, as you mentioned, well deserved. So I'm happy to step in.
Oh, well deserved. She works so hard. And now I get to step into the main hosting chair for a little bit and have on some of my friends. You're with us today, and you'll be back for the weekend recap at the end of this weekend. And we're also welcoming another friend, Marissa Pilla, CBS Sports reporter, sideline reporter for the NWSL. She'll be with us on the recap too, Laura. So it's actually great for me. I get to see all my friends.
It's perfect. Thanks for having us. This is a blast.
So this episode, we have a lot to cover, Lori. Lots of games happening. There's midweek action in the NWSL between Houston and OL Reign that happened on Wednesday evening. We'll recap that game for everyone, give an update on the standings, because as we know, the standings are so tight right now in the NWSL as we near the championship in November. Also, a big weekend ahead of NWSL games. Every team is playing, so 5 matches between Saturday and Sunday. We're going to preview them all for you and give you a heads up on what's to come from those. But first, Lori, let's recap Houston versus OL Reign. OL Reign taking the head-to-head between Houston and OL Reign with a 1-0 win over Houston Wednesday evening. This game in Houston, so hot, so humid. There were hydration breaks throughout of it. This game on CBS Sports Network, and it was a really short turnaround from last weekend's games to the midweek action. And both Houston and OL Reign have more games to come this upcoming weekend. Because of that, we saw players like Megan Rapinoe not travel for OL Reign, not play at all. But for Houston, in that starting lineup for the first time in orange was Abby Dahlkemper, slotting into that center back position alongside Katie Naughton. Megan Oyster was pushed out wide into the outside back position because Haley Hansen not available due to yellow card accumulation. But this 1-0 game for OL Reign, the goal coming from Bethany Balcer, it was her 7th. She is now tied for the league lead, the Golden Boot race, at 7 goals. What a game by Bethany Balcer. I mean, overall, Lori, when you watch these teams, OL Reign and Houston, and OL Reign, of course, with the win, but what stands out to you between these two teams?
Well, I think what stands out is when you need to get points, OL Reign is starting to get them or have been getting them. It's one thing that Allie even talked about in the broadcast yesterday is that, like, this season has been bizarre, not only just because it's been an Olympic year, but we had the Challenge Cup at the beginning, right? So it's just been a long season already, it feels like. And a lot of teams have talked about breaking it up into certain segments and needing to get points. And in particular, James Clarkson has talked about that a lot. And one of the big areas of concern for a lot of teams was how are they going to perform during that Olympic break time or when their international players are gone. And I think, unfortunately for Houston and James Clarkson's side, hasn't been that great, right? There hasn't been a ton of consistency in terms of collecting points and just being, I think, commanding in the way that they're stepping out into the field that we've seen even last year in some different parts in the Challenge Cup. However, for OL Reign, completely opposite. I mean, they missed a lot of players, but they kept plugging away. They kind of started to get their stride even during that Olympic time, collected points when needed, kept themselves tight into the group that you talked about in terms of the standing. And then it was always just a matter of time with the respect that Laura Harvey has with a lot of these players. Once she came in, just solidify things a little bit more, get this team excited with the enthusiasm that she has. And listen, they haven't missed a beat. They have been phenomenal. And as you said, important stretch of games, having played Sunday and a big win against Portland, playing on the road, having to rotate players, not missing a beat there, and then you're going to have to play again on the weekend. But OL Reign stepping up when needed, and it's the team that we started expect, or we've all expecting to see in terms of ticking along and scoring big-time goals.
The rhythm is truly coming together for OL Reign, like you mentioned. And a player like Bethany Balcer, who gets another goal in this match, and this goal came really early on, 8 minutes into this match. But in our preview episode for this game, Sandra and I, we had the pleasure of previewing it, and Sandra mentioned that the goals were going to come for this game either in the first 10 minutes or the last 10 minutes, and then it would be a stalemate throughout. Sandra, you were exactly right. Opening 10 minutes, Bethany Balcer gets the goal, but the goal really came from pressure from Jess Fishlock, who, man, Lori, she is fun to watch. She's so creative. She is their playmaker in the middle of the field for OL Reign. She puts pressure on Houston, who turns the ball over, and then it's a combination play between Fishlock and Los Sommer. Fishlock, she gets the shot off. Jane Campbell saves it. And at halftime, Marissa Pilla got to ask Bethany Balcer, why were you in that position to just tap the ball away in the goal? And she said, I wasn't sure if Fishlock was going to shoot it or pass it to me. So I needed to be in the right position. Ends up Fishlock shoots it. Jane Campbell saves the ball initially off the goal, and it's such an easy tap in for Bethany Balcer. It's always the easy ones that make them record breakers. Now she's at the top of the Golden Boot race in the NWSL, but so much of this game was slow. Honestly, it was a slow buildup. Shea Groom for Houston didn't come in until halftime, same as Jasmine Spencer. They both subbed in at the half to try to provide fresh legs and a spark, especially going against an OL Reign team that wasn't used to the heat and the humidity in Houston. Unfortunately, though, for James Clarkson's side, not able to get on the board, but Abby Dahlkemper stepping in for Houston in that back line. Lori, we talked about it, Sandra and I, about Dahlkemper joining this Houston team, and now we got to see her 90 minutes of action for Houston in orange. How does Dahlkemper, how does she fit into this back line and the play that Houston wants to do?
I think she fits in well, and I think we saw that even last night, just seamlessly playing next to Naughton. It moved Oyster out wide. And, James Clarkson has been talking about this for a bit. Like, when I've asked him in particular, okay, like, listen, you're getting all of your Olympians back, but, like, where is an area that you still feel you need to improve? And he did say depth in that central back position, because Oyster and Naughton having to play a ton. Haley Hansen has been out with injury. Alicia Chapman just getting back, right? He even said it. She was held together by a Band-Aid, essentially. So, listen, they don't have a ton of depth in the back. And to be able to bring Dahlkemper and her experience in, and then to be able to move Oyster, even though it's not her preferred position, but with the experience she has, I mean, this is going to help them, right? I just think that the tough part is like, it's getting later in the season. Yes, they're creating some of their own problems. I just think can they right the ship quicker and start to get back to the way, because leaking goals and these turnovers that are leading to the tap-ins, credit to Bethany Balcer, that's what you do as a central striker, just get in the right position, right? They don't have to be fancy. Awesome. But I'm just looking at this, I'm not so sure about the player personnel in terms of that Houston continues to put out there. I'm just not seeing the pizzazz or the excitement. And so we'll see if they have enough time to be able to turn it around. I mean, they're still in the hunt, right? And to get themselves above the playoff position, but just these aren't very convincing performances, I would say. And it's last thing is, it is cliche to be like home points are necessary, but the margins are so fine right now in this league. And as you mentioned, we do these previews and we're like, this is who we think is going to win. And then who is actually just like, we laugh because it's like, who actually knows what's going to happen? And, but that's what it feels like. But in that case, when that is the situation, you have to win at home, and Houston not doing that, not winning at home. So they're going to go on the road to Orlando, who's looking to be a bright side as well. So we'll see if they have enough time and they can kind of turn things around, even with Abby Dahlkemper.
Having enough time is the name of the game for essentially all of the teams in the standings right now, because they are so close, except of course for Portland Thorns at the top. But after the midweek matchup in the NWSL, OL Reign, they stay at number 3. However, they gain 3 points now at 28. They're tied with North Carolina. However, if you look at the actual standings, North Carolina sits ahead of OL Reign with the better goal differential, plus 13 for North Carolina, plus 5 for OL Reign. But this number 3 spot at 28 points, only 4 points behind the number 1 Portland Thorns. So it's just so tight. Houston, they remain at number 8 with 21 points, only 3 points away from that 6th place spot. Again, top 6 teams make playoff. The first 2 teams get a bye. We have a packed weekend ahead of us. Before we get to that, we're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back to Attacking Third. Lisa Roman alongside Lori Lindsey. 5 matches this weekend. Every team in the NWSL is facing off against each other. It starts on Saturday in the evening for our East Coast times. Lots of games on at the same time. Make sure you get those double monitors. But we'll start with the first game, Lori. Gotham versus Chicago Red Stars, 7 o'clock on Saturday. Number 7, Gotham FC playing number 5, Chicago Red Stars, but only 3 points separating the Red Stars and Gotham in the standings. As we talked about earlier in the week in our news and notes episode, Scott Parkinson at the helm for Gotham officially after the news this week. He is the former assistant of the Red Stars head coach Rory Dames. Not sure if he'll be at this match or not as of yet. We're recording this before news has come out about anything in that terms, but also his first assistant, Beverly Gobel-Yanez, taking over and stepping in beside Scott Parkinson. And this is the first game for Gotham without Freya Coombe. She left last weekend after Gotham's 1-0 loss to Orlando. Not for lack of effort, though, that loss. Carli Lloyd trying her best to get goals. And Lori, this one, Chicago Gotham, who do you have winning this one?
You know what? I'm going to go with Gotham because typically, as you mentioned, we're not sure about Scott Parkinson, if he will be there yet, but we imagine that Bev Yanez, at least one of them will be. And I think, typically there's a real good balance of some experience and youth in this team. And, it seems without knowing exactly that, the coaching change and all that had been going on with the club had started to weigh on this Gotham team and the club throughout this last month, right? They were on a really good trajectory and then kind of lost their way in August. So I think sometimes when you have these coaching changes, it really rejuvenates the team. So I'm going to go with Gotham because they are playing at home as well. And I think, as you mentioned, Carli Lloyd could have easily, if it wasn't for Ashlyn Harris and breaking the record, right, 469 saves, if it wasn't for her, that could have been a totally different result, and we could have a different conversation here. So I think that they're still playing a high-level game. I think that they have a real good continuity between the players, and I think they could put some pressure under or on Chicago coming in because Gotham also knows they need to win, and I think that is very clear. And with the games just a few left for Carli Lloyd, she's going to be feeling that. And granted, she definitely guarantee that she wants to go out on a win. So,
Laura, you mentioned the changes with Parkinson and now Yanez as first assistant. What the rebrand wasn't enough change for Gotham this year. They needed they needed more going into it. No, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I just have to go against you. I think Chicago is going to win this. This is the point in the season for Rory Dames and his squad that they can just somehow shift into a new gear. I've seen it happen before with his team, even early in the season, the first fourth or third of the season, he was like, we are right where we need to be at the bottom of the table. He didn't care about the playoff standings. He said, we're exactly where we need to be. We will get the points where we need to get them. In Chicago, they're coming off a 3-0 win over Kansas City. 2 of those goals coming off set pieces. So they're getting goals off set piece opportunities, which that means a lot. That means a lot going into games like this if you can capitalize on those opportunities. And then the last goal for Chicago coming in the run of play. So they have the double threat there depending on where they get their opportunities. But there's something about Mallory Pugh, Watt up top, even in the middle of the park and in their back line, the players that just somehow kick it into another gear. Even having the Olympians back, Tierna Davidson, the training sessions for Chicago have been elevated because of that. We'll see though. I'm going to go with Chicago. I think it'll be narrow though. I think 1-0 Chicago. Do you have a scoreline for me, Lori?
Ooh, I'm going to go with 2-1 Gotham. And I like this. I really appreciate that you're going against me, and let's report back. Lisa, I'm going to be texting you on Saturday. Okay.
I can't wait, Lori. I can't wait. Well, we have more games after this one. So that game, Chicago Gotham, starting at 7 at 7:30 Eastern. Racing Louisville versus OL Reign. OL Reign This is just a very quick turnaround from their Wednesday matchup in Houston, now playing against Racing Louisville, number 9 Louisville against number 3 OL Reign. And this is the first match for Racing Louisville since the news that head coach Christy Holly was terminated as head coach on Tuesday evening. There has been no more news out of Louisville since then. But as it pertains to that game, Mario Sanchez will take over the head coaching duties for Racing Louisville. He's the head coach of Soccer Holdings Youth Academy, and Soccer Holdings is the parent company of Racing Louisville, for those who are curious what that means. But Louisville, they're finally out of their stretch of back-to-back games. Every team has had it at some point or another throughout this season, and Louisville got hit pretty hard with that. And now OL Reign coming off their 3rd straight win. The Olympians, they're fully back. They're fully integrative. What does Laura Harvey bring for OL Reign against Racing Louisville?
Well, I think she'll absolutely know that taking their foot off the pedal is a non-negotiable, especially after having these 3 straight wins and a quick turnaround, getting the result at Houston, where it's not easy to play, and then having to go play at Racing Louisville. So I am going to give the upper hand to OL Reign. I don't think it will be as of a big a margin as we would maybe typically expect, given where OL Reign is right now. Compared to what I would usually say against a Racing Louisville, and where they are, just because of that 3-game stretch and the travel that's involved. I also think, unlike what I said against Gotham, with a coaching change, sometimes that's really exciting for a team. I'll be really curious. This is a young Racing Louisville team that has not really developed much consistency throughout the season. They've gotten some needed results to keep them pushing along, and they've performed well in their first year. But I think, given they're so young, I'll be really curious about how this coaching change and the firing of Christy Holly affects, because I think this is the first season for a lot of these players, a long season, playing 90 minutes, and it'll be challenging to find out who really is going to lead them in terms of that captaincy and leadership at this point in time. I think it's going to be really tough for them, and against an OL Reign team that has a ton of leadership, who is hell yeah, let's get ourselves into the playoffs. Let's vie for that top spot. We're not messing around anymore. So my prediction is 2-1 OL Reign. I like that. I seem to like that score prediction. That's across the board. It's just going to be 2-1 this weekend, okay?
I'm going to hold you to that. Yeah, I agree. I think OL Reign will come out on top of this. The coaching changeover for Racing Louisville is definitely throwing a pebble in their road, in their road to a playoff position. The wins matter right now for Racing Louisville because they are towards the bottom of the standings at number 9, only Kansas City below them. Every single game, they need to take points off of their opponent. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Racing Louisville try to play to a draw in this matchup just to get 1 point off OL Reign and try to climb that way. As you mentioned, OL Reign, a quick turnaround for them and for their Olympians. Megan Rapinoe not at the Wednesday matchup against Houston. Presumably, she will play against Racing Louisville. Lori, will she get another penalty kick?
I mean, she might. I mean, listen, the way that this team is playing, and the pressure that they're putting under, forcing the turnovers, forcing teams to have to go to ground in the final third and in a penalty spot. I mean, why not? And right now, she's unstoppable. I mean, it's been great.
She is unstoppable, and the attack that OL Reign has with Angelina, Rose Lavelle, Jess Fishlock, Megan Rapinoe, it's unmatched. Honestly, it is so fun to watch, and the organization of Racing Louisville isn't quite there defensively to put a stop to that when they can go over teams like Portland and make Portland not look the best in the second half of that Cascadia rivalry due to the attacking presence of OL Reign. I give OL Reign this one. I want to see lots of goals. I'm going to go 2-0. I was going to go 3-0, but I have to remember that I think Racing Louisville will sit back and play a bit more defensively in this matchup just to try to take 1 point, squeak out with a tie and get 1 point off OL Reign. The last matchup of Saturday, we have some NWSL After Dark action. It's Portland Thorns playing host to Washington Spirit. Portland had a nice long week break along with Washington. Portland coming off of the Cascadia loss to OL Reign last weekend, 2-1. And I think that loss against OL Reign hurt Portland Thorns more or just as much as it elevated OL Reign and gave them momentum. I think that Portland will come out with a vengeance in this matchup against Washington. One thing that head coach Mark Parsons said about that Portland OL Reign game is that Portland should have finished it in the first half. They got one right before halftime from Angela Salem, but they could have had 2 or 3 more opportunities. So I think that Portland's going to come out against this Washington Spirit team looking to put it away in the first half. Also, you have to take a look at Washington Spirit. They're coming off of a scoreless draw against North Carolina. Trinity Rodman, her consistency on the field, it needs to be better. In big moments, she can step up and she can surprise opponents with her speed and her ability and her really clever footwork when she has the ball. But Tori Huster, Andy Sullivan, it's the midfield unit for me watching this Washington Spirit team that is truly the biggest factor in helping them get a win. This might be one of my favorite games of the weekend that I'm going to watch, not only because it's NWSL After Dark, so something crazy is bound to happen for sure, but just because of the matchup and everything that is on the line for both of these teams. So, Lori, for you, Portland, Washington?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with a tie with this one. I think, I agree with everything you said.
No 2-1. No 2-1.
Yeah, listen, I had to mix it up. I agree with you, though. This is one of my favorite matchups of the weekend as well. I think, obviously Portland has been really just outstanding with their performances this year and the way they've gone about it. And always going to be a tough matchup with OL Reign. That could have gone either way, really. But with Washington, I feel like there is something here. Like, this is the youngest team in the league, and they're collectively still doing some really quality things. And for a team to hold that attack of North Carolina scoreless last weekend is massive in terms of confidence. Now, it does come down to the midfield. I agree with you on that as well, with Andy Sullivan, Tori Huster, Dorian Bailey, or whoever, how they decide to go with that configuration. I think the big question mark is how they will always deal with that extra player for Portland in there and defend that. It's not easy place to play at Portland, maybe not everyone knows that, but you can imagine, right, in front of all the fans. So it's going to be a challenge for Washington. But I think defensively, if they can get organized, they can cause some issues themselves. But I'm going with a tie because I think this could be pretty good battle just in general through the middle of the park.
I'm also going to go with the tie on this one, but mine won't be scoreless. I don't know what yours is going to be. I'll get you there, but
1-1.
I want to get my I wanted to go 1-1. Well, fine. We'll both go 1-1. I agree. I think that it'll be so tight. That's why this is my game to watch. I'm so excited to watch this matchup and this rivalry. And for a team like Washington, they need points too. As you look at the standings, Washington number 6, 23 points. They're right on the bubble of that playoff spot. And Portland, they took their first loss in 10 games or 11 games against OL Reign. They don't like to lose. They don't like that taste in their mouth. I think they'll come back powerful with a vengeance, looking to get back on the quote unquote right track for the Thorns, especially as the championship nears. But the young squad in Washington Spirit, they can put up such a fight. They really can. So those are the 3 games we have on Saturday, Sunday, 2 slates for matches in the NWSL. The first one, Orlando versus Houston. This game is at 4 Eastern. Lori, I believe you'll be there. We'll hear the soothing sounds of Lori and Jen on the air.
I like it. Yes, we will be there. For the space race is what it's being dubbed. This space race.
Oh, I love that. The space race between Orlando and Houston. Why not? Orlando coming off the big 1-0 win over Gotham. We talked about it a little bit earlier, the Ashlyn Harris versus Carli Lloyd matchup. Alex Morgan, she might be back for this one. We're recording this before injury reports are out and available, but just imagine Sydney Leroux and Alex Morgan, this such a force in the attack. So if Morgan is in the lineup or available for this game, I assume she'll play. She wants to get back out there and competing. Houston, they're coming off of a very narrow loss to OL Reign Wednesday. Quick turnaround for them, and they have to travel to Orlando. Abby Dahlkemper playing 90 minutes in the match against OL Reign on Wednesday. The back four, Alicia Chapman, Katie Naughton, Abby Dahlkemper in the center back, and then Megan Oyster on the outside back. I don't know if Haley Hansen will be back. She was out for yellow card accumulation for the Wednesday match against OL Reign, but I imagine that Abby Dahlkemper will stay in that center back position, just what James Clarkson does with the other players around her and around Katie Naughton in the center back. Still up for question, but Lori, this is the big game. This is the space race right here. Who's getting to space first?
Yeah, I think that Orlando is getting to space first in this one. I think it was they're starting to see some production from some other players. Erica Timrak with the big goal the other weekend or last weekend on against Gotham that proved to be the game winner. And I think this is they're going to have a little bit more of a break, not playing the midweek game. And I think they need to use that to their advantage, playing at home, having more rest, push the pace of the game as much as possible. And then, listen, whether Alex Morgan is playing, but whether she's starting or coming off the bench, which I think that maybe that would be the case, you still have players like, Sydney LaRue's up in that the race for Golden Boot, Jody Taylor that has been outstanding and have alleviated some of the goal scoring responsibilities off of just Sydney LaRue. So this is a team that is starting to pick up points and really start to play at a higher level at the right time, much like we said with OL Reign. So I'm going to give it to Orlando, again, playing at home, and they need those points, and they'll know that. And also I think that they can cause some issues in the midfield. We talk a lot about midfield battles, and this game I think is not going to be any different. And it's going to be about who can kind of get the ball moving, play their front runners quickly, like both of these teams want. And I'm going to give that edge to Orlando.
A smart edge. I think Orlando's getting to space first as well. I think we'll see goals, though. I'm going to go a 2-1 win to the Pride in this one. Like you mentioned, Sydney LaRue, man, she knows how to score goals, and they do have the power to have a player like Marta in the midfield and Erica Timrak, who got the goal last week. There's something building there for them. I think interim head coach Becky Burley is doing a nice job just listening to the players and listening to their needs at Orlando, understanding not necessarily what the team needs to do to win, but what each individual player needs to do to be successful on the field. And then she's putting that puzzle together on the field to get Orlando wins. I think over a team like Houston, you have to take a look at the power that they have in Rachel Daly, Shea Groom, the speed that they have. And I think that'll cause some trouble for Orlando's back line. Just the speed factor between Daly and Shea Groom up top, even Veronica Latsko and Jasmine Spencer, she can be so quick on the ball too. And I think the speed might outrun Orlando Pride's backline, and that's why Houston will get one on the board. In my 2-1 score prediction, you have Orlando as well. Last matchup for the NWSL of the weekend, it's Kansas City versus the North Carolina Courage, 7:00 Eastern on Sunday. KC and North Carolina, they faced off just a few weeks ago, August 21st. North Carolina taking that game 4-1. Kansas City, they're at the bottom of the table, but they've been putting some good games together. They've been putting good stretches of games together. Their only 2 wins of the season have come in the last 4 games. So when the momentum needed to build and they needed to get goals and score and win games, they did. Lori, I don't know about you, but Sandra and I, we were very excited for Kansas City to get some wins under their belt. Hugh Williams, he's compiling a squad at Kansas City with Haley Mays, Kristen Hamilton. I think they're starting to find their rhythm with the midfield in Lola Bonta for Kansas City and understanding how each other plays and how to go against other teams. But the name of the game for Kansas City needs to be defending against this North Carolina squad. Last time out, North Carolina, they did not go with their traditional box in the midfield. They switched it up. Do you think we'll see the box again, Lori, or are they staying with their new formation?
Good question. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to the box against Kansas City. I think that's what they're most familiar with clearly. And, I think that it does cause, as much as you want to scout them, it causes teams a lot of problems in terms of picking players up. And listen, when you have Debinha and you have Amy Rodriguez now and Lynn Williams and Jess McDonald, I mean, that is a potent front attack. I mean, I'm with you in terms of Kansas City, and they haven't been afraid to make some moves to turn some things around. So I think this game's going to be tighter than we think, but I'm going to go 2-0 North Carolina, because I think the biggest thing with Kansas City, even though they're starting to build a tougher group to play against, has been just defensively. They've had some defensive woes, and against North Carolina, not going to be happy with not scoring any goals against Washington last weekend. They're going to come out firing. It's not an easy place to play in Kansas City, but I'm going to give them a 2-0 lead. Win.
North Carolina gets the win for Lori. You're right. The defense for Kansas City, it hasn't quite been there. We've seen a player like Katie Bowen for Kansas City shift from outside back to the center midfield 6 defensive mid position. Do you like her in one place versus the other?
I like her in that center mid role. That is another area. And when we talk about defensively, I'm not just always talking about the back four. I'm talking about as a general, where are the holes. And centrally in the midfield, that has been an issue, right? The way that Hugh Williams has said that he wants to play is not what has been replicated out in the field quite a bit. And that just takes time in terms of the personnel that you have in the spots that you want. And one of the things that he wants to do is move the ball quickly. He wants to circulate the ball. He's talked about switching the point of attack, finding the weak side. Well, Katie Bowen can do that for them as a number 6. And also she brings that defensive presence in terms of just sitting in front of that back line, shoring things up, but also when they get on the ball and have possession themselves, she also can be that link player who will connect the back to the attack. And that's important. So, however, when you're only playing with one of those, and we'll see how they adjust, that's why I think the box is important for North Carolina, is because you can get players flanking that number 6, and it can cause a lot of problems with the way that North Carolina plays. So, it still can cause some issues, even though they are starting to shore some things up defensively for Kansas City. I just think it could be too much at this point in time in the season to keep a clean sheet.
And so, North Carolina 2-0. I like it. Stick with your gut there. And North Carolina, they switched from the box, playing against a team like Washington Spirit that knows North Carolina and their system of play very well. I think switching back to the box against Kansas City would be a smart move for the Courage, because Kansas City defensively, that's a lot of numbers to handle in the midfield. Katie Bowen, she needs to be at that 6 position. KC, if anyone's listening, keep her there. She does such a nice job to break up the play. Yes, exactly. Come on, Hugh Williams, let's go. But Katie Bowen needs to be in that midfield position. I think 2-0 is a very good scoreline. And I do apologize. I correct myself. The last time they played earlier, just a few weeks ago, it was 4-0. Kansas City did not get one. I believe I said 4-1 earlier. I think North Carolina, they take this one as well. I want to go 2-0 as well. 2-0 for Kansas City. Their defense is good, but it's no match against this North Carolina team, and that box that they have, and Lynn Williams up top. The speed is just fun. This is a fun one to watch. So Kansas City, North Carolina closes out our weekend of NWSL matches, a full slate of games between Saturday and Sunday. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And thanks to our guest analyst, Lori Lindsey, for joining us. She will be back on Monday to recap all of these games, along with CBS reporter and WSL sideline reporter Marissa Pilla. She'll be joining us as well to break down these 5 matches. A reminder to follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. Also, give Lori a follow on Twitter at Lori Lindsey 6, I believe. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a question, and we will answer it. We're also available as video, so subscribe to us on YouTube for all of our episodes and extended NWSL highlights from Paramount Plus. Just visit youtube.com/attacking third. We will be back Sunday alongside Marissa Pilla, another Philly gal, to recap the entire weekend. For Lori Lindsey, I'm Lisa Roman. This was Attacking Third.